I want to live my life to the fullest, and I can't do that hungry, and I can't do that trying to starve myself. Feeding yourself is the ultimate form of self-love.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too.
Thank you for having me. The concept of this podcast, I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. I love what you're doing as well. So let's just spend the hour complimenting each other, you know?
I'm down.
So right off the bat, one question I ask all my guests is about their goldfish moment, which is the first time that you thought about or conceptualized death in some way. For some people, it was a goldfish. I know that we're honoring the loss of your dad at a younger age, so I'm curious if that was that experience for you, if there was something that preceded that. Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
I love that you call it a goldfish moment. That's so good. So my goldfish moment was like my dad, which is like a little bit more intense than, a goldfish. But let me rewind. I actually don't think it was my dad. I think my father was dying before I could conceptualize death. I had just turned 11. He was sick, 9 years old, 10 years old. And I remember my dad was dying. His head was like wrapped like a mummy. I hope that's not TMI for you. I'm
not at all.
And he couldn't talk because he had throat cancer. It was very obvious. It was really scary to go visit him. But I remember driving home one day with my mom because my parents were divorced. And I said, you know what, Mom? I believe in miracles. I think, a miracle is going to happen. And she tells me this moment a lot because it's like, no, there's not going to be a miracle. So I think my body understood death before my brain did, because when he was gone, it was almost like a black hole,
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting when you're saying your body before your brain. I think understanding loss throughout those early preteen years is really fascinating. And of course, you can speak to that well due to your experiences. So thank you for sharing. And I look forward to hearing more. Before we talk about the fact that you're an anti-diet culture writer and all of the things you're doing with body image in conjunction with grief and on its own, I would love to paint a little bit more of a picture for our audience. So you mentioned this loss of your dad when you were 11. Can you talk about where you grew up, who you grew up with, and what it was like when you first found out that your dad was diagnosed?
So my parents had recently split. A lot of things happened in a short period of time for me. And I was in the kitchen of my dad's very I'm now a single dad condo,
Yeah.
And he told me that he had bit his tongue and needed to get surgery. And I was like, okay, cool, fine. But he was nervous, and I'd never seen my dad nervous before. So I didn't really know what was going on. There wasn't as much open communication as I think maybe I would handle with my child. But kids are so smart. I mean, I knew my life was going to change in a huge way. I couldn't tell you how or why, but yeah.
That's really interesting. And then he said it was because he bit his tongue. And then do you remember at some point him mentioning, actually, it's something else, or actually, I have cancer? What did that look like?
I remember being at tutoring and my mom got a phone call, and I think he went into remission for a little bit, and I think I heard her kind of gasp in the other room because my mom was there with me. I think trauma and memory is so interesting because I kind of go from that day in the kitchen to just maybe a few hospital visits when he had to get neck surgery to him dying.
Do you have a favorite memory of your dad, and what was his name?
So my dad's name was Kenny, and one of my favorite memories, and it just so sums up my dad. He was so creative, so funny. And for Halloween one year, he made me a Blockbuster video, like VHS tape to wear. And the movie was That Thing You Do.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's something I really grieve as an adult. Like, you're in the industry, you get it. I'm like diehard TV movie fan. And I know like my dad and I would bond so much through that. So it's like you said, like when you're younger and you don't get to have an adult like concept of your dad, I have to like fill in the blanks. So I imagine that's something that we would love doing together.
Absolutely. I love that costume. Costume of the year where kids like obsessed. Like I feel like that's so cool and like no one would have that and I would have been the girl that's like I wish I had that cool costume. Like
You know, my friend's dad made her a Bluebell ice cream. If you're from Texas, you get the Bluebell part, but
wow, these are good costumes.
and she won the fucking competition and I felt so robbed and I still feel robbed. It's a sore subject.
These dads are pulling through with the costumes. My goodness.
Right?
Isn't it hilarious those things from that time period that you really do remember? Like I remember running for 5th grade class president and I remember who won and I remember like being like that is just not okay. Like why did she win? But also like of course it's okay because she won and these are the lessons you learn in elementary school.
I cannot believe you did not win class president. I'm having a hard time. With that.
Thank you for your support. I had leopard print posters with mirrors on them that said reflect your good taste and
This is
vote
what
for
I'm
me.
talking about. This is what I'm talking about. That should have been a slam dunk win.
Oh my gosh. Also in fairness, she also became homecoming queen when we were in 12th grade. So I lost to her twice. It's a whole time. And I was like, come on. It's the same girl. Okay, now we're really going down memory lane. So you were in Texas. Where were you born and raised in Texas?
So Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
not Austin. Sorry to disappoint everyone, but yep.
That's hilarious. Is that the reaction you get often? Because I feel like, yeah, people are obsessed with Austin. Like everyone's moving there every day.
Yeah. What do they say? Like, oh, Austin's the California of Texas. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, yeah, that's the reaction I get.
Interesting. You're like, it is the California of Texas with different abortion laws. Okay, let's not talk about politics, but real talk. Okay, so how did you find your way from Dallas to Los Angeles? And can you tell me about the start of your experience as an anti-diet culture writer?
Yeah. So I graduated high school, did not go to college, got a professional contract as a trainee with a ballet company in Kentucky.
Wow, how cool.
Louisville, which is also the Austin of Kentucky. So I don't know. But my grief started hitting me. I was depressed. Like looking back, I was depressed. I hadn't processed my grief, was in like this cutthroat, brutal world where your only worth was if this dude at the front of the studio loved you and how your body looked or not. I got let go, was promised a contract in Santa Barbara.
How old were you at this time?
19.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Also discovered drinking, all right, which I was very good at. And he like avoided me. And I finally had to be like, do I have a contract or not? To this director who hired me. He reneged the contract. I was like in California and I was like, I can't keep auditioning anymore. Like I can't do this. So I started taking film classes at the community college, transferred to Chapman's screenwriting program, and have been a writer ever since. Moved to LA and I love it. I mean, I don't love the cost of my rent, but I truly love it here.
Beautiful. I love it too. There are pros and cons of living everywhere. So yay for loving LA. Thank you for sharing your story about being 19 and those auditions in Kentucky. And I feel that the ballet world and the dance world, like they say, is really, really brutal. I'm sure there's beautiful moments, but it's unimaginable to me. Even as an actress, I feel like I can relate more than others. But dance specifically, though, with your body, can you talk more about that? What was it like moving to Kentucky and being with these other women or men in the program?
By the time you're like 18 and like entering your first contract as a ballet dancer, your brain is so messed up and your priorities, like the only thing that matters is thinness. That's what you're taught,
Wow.
which is interesting because have you read any of Claire Bidwell Smith's stuff?
No.
She's a cool grief writer. And I met with her and she said this thing that I'll never forget. She said to me, you would have an eating disorder even if you weren't in the ballet world, because that's how complicated and hard grief is. So I kind of had it on both sides. I was trying to avoid all pain from the loss of my dad, which restricting and binging really keeps you distracted, false sense of control. And then I had a ballet teacher that wanted me to be thinner, more bones, she'd say to me.
Oh, she actually would say that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that someone said that to you. It's not okay.
I mean, I'm sure you have so many stories, and it is. So I feel like by the time I got into the professional world, I was just such a shell of myself that I started falling out of love with the art of it.
Sure. It's like, how can you even focus on the art when there's all of these other factors? I'm wondering what the ballet community is doing to combat eating disorders within the teen communities. Are there organizations that are standing up for this? One would think there's more access to information and realizing that this is detrimental. What does that look like?
So I try and stay.
Or it's you. It's you. It's what you're doing.
I'm scared of dancers. I'm like, don't follow me. Yeah. Just kidding. I'm a safe space. Yeah. But I have a friend who I danced with at Louisville Ballet who actually lost her father really young. And she isn't dancing anymore, but she started a company called The Whole Dancer, which is helping dancers with their mental health, not dieting. She told me the other day that she posted an article on her Facebook that was like, why ballet schools should stop weighing dancers. You're never going to believe the response, or I don't know. The comments were so angry. They were like, no, we can't stop weighing our children. Like, what? They got angry at her. Yeah. So I think the ballet world can kind of talk the talk now, like the PC talk, but there's a lot, they are so far behind. I would even say like the acting world, because their aesthetic relies on thinness and they haven't come to terms with that yet.
I'm just shaking my head because I'm like, no. Like even my reaction when you're saying the words weighing plus children, I'm like, what? No, absolutely not. That's just terrifying. I haven't owned a scale in 10 years. And
I love hearing, do you know how rare that is to hear?
Really?
Yes.
I don't actually. Okay.
It's, and especially like in the industry you're in, that is huge. I still have so many followers who are still considering throwing out their scales. And I think I'm about 3 or 4 years scale free. Changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. I can't believe you don't have a scale. I'm like, this is wonderful.
I just don't need to know. Like, I'm sure it changes up and down a little, and just knowing that seems like, I don't know, it just seems like I don't need to know, but maybe I'll change my mind one day.
That's just like such a healthy mindset, because it's true. Our bodies, society doesn't want us to know this, but our bodies do fluctuate with life. If you're grieving someone, if you have a child, if you're going through depression, if you like, our bodies are meant to fluctuate, and women's bodies are meant to change as we age,
Yes, I completely agree. So since you have written all about this, you're the expert in this field. I was looking at some of your work and I wonder, do you have a favorite piece or project or video that you have created? Is there something that comes to mind, just to share with the audience a little bit more about what you do? Is there one or two pieces that stick out?
If I'm being honest, I did write a book over the past 3 years. I'm in the trenches with it right now, with out on submission, or do I want to do it faster through self-publishing or whatever. But it really, it interweaves both like eating disorders and grief and how the two affect each other. I would also say I have a quote on my Instagram that I really like, because so much of being in recovery, both from booze and eating disorder, probably other things too, like unhealthy relationships or whatever. But so much, if you're caught in that cycle, what it's about is not being able to tolerate pain. And people who have gone through massive losses, it's hard to tolerate pain. It's like, it's fucking hard, you know? And I see so I don't know, I would love to hear your thoughts on this too, but I see so many Instagram saying like, "This is how you should show up for a grieving friend," like this. And one of my mentees went through a very, very, very hard loss. And it was hard for me, it was hard for her, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, a care package isn't gonna fix this. It's not gonna fix this. And so what was born of that was this quote, which is, the most radical way we can show up for someone who is grieving is to be brave enough to witness their pain without trying to fix it. And it is so hard. I'm a people pleaser, I'm a fixer. But when we try and fix other people's pain, it's really just us not being able to tolerate our own pain, you know?
A lot of I know, yeah. I feel like there's a lot of psychological reasons why someone might try and show up and fix an X and Y and Z. So thank you for sharing that. Speaking of someone who is struggling with their body, with their food, what is the first thing you would say to that person? Is there a book or a resource or a community you would point them towards?
Yes. Intuitive Eating, the book by fourth edition, Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribble, get it on Amazon, changed my life. I was 100% certain that I would never, ever, ever, ever be able to find a peaceful relationship with food. This changed my life. Now, there's a lot of inner work, because this obsession with thinness or dieting or wanting to change your body, which leads to the complicated feelings around food, like, it's always deeper. You always have to go deeper than, well, I want to be thin or thinner. But this book totally changed my life. It helps you heal your relationship with food, whether that's feelings of guilt or overeating or shame. And most importantly, it helps you like enjoy the pleasure of food again, because if you have lost someone, you know, like, life is, this is it. One life, and we don't know when we're going to go. Let's enjoy it, you know?
Yes. And food is pleasurable. It is something to enjoy. And moderation and other things. There's so many factors at play. Of course, I'm not the expert here, but thank you for the recommendation of that book. So Intuitive Eating, it sounds like maybe it's based more on being intuitive and what your body needs in the moment, as opposed to like restricting to only this kind of
Exactly.
diet. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, I would say it really helps you heal like the food police. Like, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. If I had to say like one phrase, it truly helps you give yourself permission to unconditionally eat and feed yourself. And when you're not mentally restricting the, oh, I can't eat this and I'm so bad. Like, you're not bad. Food, there's no morality to food, you know? So it really helps with unconditional permission to eat, which, if you're someone who struggles with maybe overeating or binge eating, it's not because you're out of control. It's because you've been restricting, you know? So I highly recommend that book.
Where do you think our relationship with food comes from? I think some people are going to be predispositioned to one thing or another to a point, but I think nature and nurture can play a factor. I don't know, because everyone has something. Like if you do have a healthy relationship with food, you might have an unhealthy relationship with something else, right? So we all have something. But when it comes to food, since this is your world, what do you think about early childhood development in relationship to food?
We are born intuitive eaters. We know when we're hungry, we know when we're full, we know what our body craves. And like, I love attachment theory. I'm not an expert at all in it, but like, one of the foundations of kind of this like childhood development is saying as a baby, like, hey, I have a need, I'm hungry, and your mother or father providing that. Like, that comes into play with your attachment style in the future, like everything. Like, can you speak needs and have them be met? I think that's really important. But then as you get older, like, I think it's 100% your environment. And I also think it's patriarchy, diet culture, parents, for me, after school activities. And then, of course, eating disorders aren't only aesthetic disorders. It could be grief, childhood trauma. People are seeking control for out of control situations.
Hey, popping in here to shout out two of my favorite co-founders, Max and Miles, who are the founders of Oak Tree Memorials. These are modern memorials made from exceptional and sustainable materials. They founded the company after talking with friends and family and asked if they had a similar experience paying up the wazoo for urns and memorials. And they realized that many others had the same challenge and that the answer was yes. So with this in mind, they designed and curated a contemporary collection of urns and jewelry, handcrafted from high-quality, environmentally friendly materials for you and for your family. I love their bestseller collection. Some of my favorites include the Madison in vibrant multicolor, as well as the Vega vase in white with light wood. These urns and memorials start at $165, $295. There's some in the $700 range, etc. But none of them are $10,000, which you can easily see in other funeral homes and coffins and urns and memorials, etc. in other sites. I can personally vouch for Max and Miles, and I even interviewed them for last season. You can Google Dying of Laughter Oak Tree Memorials, and their interview will come up. And meanwhile, if you're interested in one-of-a-kind urns designed by artisans in the United States and Europe that are handcrafted with care using the highest quality wood, ceramics, and marble, then you can head over to oaktreememorials.com to learn more. If you'd like to save money off your first purchase, I'll include a link for the discount code in the show notes here today. You'll get 20% off your first purchase. Again, head on over to the link in my show notes, and it's a win-win. I only shout out products I genuinely believe in and ones where I've talked to the founders in depth to make sure their hearts, minds, and souls are in the right place. And these two, I couldn't say more kind things about. So thanks, Max and Miles. I hope you guys like what they're putting down as much as I do. And let's head back over to the episode. My dear friend who's a mom of a 6-month-old baby, she said something that's all the rage right now is there's two big schools of thought for feeding your baby. And it's like the traditional way, like spoon feeding, like mashed up things that you make or buy. And then there's like giving babies whole foods and putting it in front of them and waiting for them to eat it and figure it out. And it takes a lot longer, but it's like this new big thing. Have you heard about this? Have you seen it online? I know you don't have a baby, but
I don't have a baby.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I think we're learning so much. I don't know, but if there's any moms out there, you have to follow Feeding Littles. I mean, oh my God. They tell you everything about like baby's texture and like, and it is intuitive eating based, but I follow it because it's like healing to my child's self. But
right.
They work with everyone, children who are like toddlers who can't eat because maybe their tongue doesn't function. Like, go follow them. It's so good. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for the rec. Yeah, no, I don't have a baby either, but it's really interesting because my friend was saying too, like, you know, this like intuitive or this newer train of thought is like really interesting, but she's like, it takes so much longer. So to a point, she's like, I don't have time to wait 2 hours to see what my baby is going to do. And even there's financial factors of like this intuitive train of thought is more expensive because then they end up like throwing most of it on the floor. And like some people cannot afford to do that. And just how interesting. And she's like, everyone asks you like, I wish I knew what they were called. Maybe I'll look it up.
Is she in LA?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That sounds like, yeah.
Like, oh my God. What are you doing for your toddler? Like this one or this one?
Yeah. And it's also time too. Like, are you a working mother? Like, you know, do you have help? That's something I also like about this Feeding Littles account is like, they're all about balance. And sometimes it's like, if you have this for like children or whatever, this isn't even a good example, but like, you know, sometimes they're going to have peanut butter toast for dinner, you know, like, and you're still a good mom.
What have been your biggest takeaways through your healing journey with food? And I know that our relationships continue to evolve, but do you have a few takeaways or tips that have really helped you with your own relationship?
Yeah, I worked with Elise Resch, who's the co-author of Intuitive Eating, which is a huge privilege to be able to do that. And for me, it was really going deeper past the food. And she said to me in one session, she said, why is thinner better to you? And I really shocked myself. I said, because I'm easier to love, which is like devastating. And I just now put the puzzle piece, the final like puzzle piece together with that. Like, what is my fear if I'm hard to love? That I'll be left, right? And it goes back to like being abandoned by my dad. I mean, he also had addiction problems, which they say is, even though someone's not like abandoning you, like addiction is abandonment within like a childhood home. So, if I'm perfect, if I have the perfect body, then I don't have to, nothing can touch me. No one will die. I'll never have to feel pain again. And it's just not true. And at this point, like, I want to live my life to the fullest, and I can't do that hungry, and I can't do that trying to starve myself. Like, I need to be happy and well fed, and right, it's self love. Like, feeding yourself is the ultimate form of self love.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I resonate. I'm like, I completely agree. And so that's beautiful. What are some of, and you can please let me know if I'm guiding us down something that's not going to be doable here, but I wonder, like, what are some of your favorite things to cook? Is that okay to ask? Does this become
Oh my God,
trigger
yes.
warning? Okay.
I am doing very well in my recovery. I am a huge foodie. Like, food is one of my biggest joys. I love cooking. One of my favorite dishes, if I want something like a little bit lighter but super flavorful, is Allison Roman's. It's like this fish poached in tomatoes, which is good.
Ooh.
So good. Look it up. And it has like this chili oil on it. For Christmas, we're doing like an American Italian thing. So I'm going to make arancini for the first
What
time.
is that?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's risotto. They're risotto balls stuffed with cheese and then
Ooh.
fried,
I mean, yes. Just the word
right?
yes. Just
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So I love cooking it all, and I love feeding my partner. It's like I love it.
So you cook for you guys sometimes, it sounds
Yes.
like. Okay, love
Yeah.
that. And if people are not big in the cooking world, are there a few food bloggers you would recommend that they follow, or a few staples to have in the house? Like, okay, start here with these products or with these people.
There's an account, Work Week Lunch, that helps you easy, quick, satiating, nutritious like meal ideas, but no diet talk. So that's a really good one. And then in terms of like fun food stuff, I love Allison Roman. I think you feel like very like foodie and chefy, but they're very easy and approachable. I like What's Gabby Cooking. And if you want
Cool.
some really good cookies, Sally's Baking Addiction is amazing.
Love. I don't know any of these people, so I'm going to check them out. I'm like, who do I
Yes.
follow? Okay. Half Baked Harvest.
Yes, that's it.
Unbelievable. Like, if you want to really treat yourself in like holiday meals and just like have a big old time, I have made things from there that have blown my mind. I think she's
Right?
really talented. Like that is like no joke. Her shit is bomb and her photos are just unbelievable.
Insane. I made
Yes.
actually with my Walk with Sally mentee who graduated the program, we bake on Zoom together.
That is so cute. Can't wait to ask more.
We made her like garlic cheesy bread.
Mm. Oh my gosh,
It,
I saw that. I saw her post about that.
right? It was insane. It was
Wow.
a wild ride.
Do you find that people including themselves in a certain community such as paleo or vegan or vegetarian is helpful or harmful? Do you think these are considered diets?
Listen, it's a hot button topic.
Okay.
I truly believe that all of those can be diets,
Mm-hmm.
and things like paleo, Whole 30, keto, Noom. Don't even get me started on Noom.
What is Noom? I've never heard of
Oh my
Noom.
gosh. So it's this new diet program that says it's not a diet and is like co-opting intuitive eating language.
Oh,
It's really messed up, but they're all based on restriction. If you see restriction, it's a diet. Because here's the thing about these diets. When you're cutting out food groups, like, oh my God, Atkins and South Beach were huge when I was in.
right.
I had a girl who told me to watch out for the carbs and the lime when I was in high school. Like,
What? That's
yes,
ridiculous.
I know. So when you're cutting out food groups, that's major restriction, and you are most likely, that's definitely a path toward disordered eating. Toward, if you're restricting, you're probably going to binge in some way later. You're going to hate yourself for it, and then the shame cycle continues.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing your take. I know it's I mean, it's interesting. Like you're saying, it's a hot button topic, but then it's so prevalent to our society. We all have friends who do this one and then do this one. And I will say, I don't know how to say this without this sounding weird, but yeah, my friends have always said you have such a good relationship with food. Like you're
Yeah.
our friend that doesn't have a thing about food. I do feel for whatever reason, I haven't had a thing with food, but I feel like I'm like one of the only people I know. I feel like most
Yeah.
people have had. I don't know what it is, and I think it's like it's interesting because so my mom was not a single mom, but my dad was paralyzed and he didn't live with us because of his ALS starting from middle school,
Wow.
and she grew up. We won't go too far. I'm just sharing because it's interesting.
No, I
To
love
me,
to hear.
it doesn't have to be, it might not be. Okay. I'm like, no one else said it. It's interesting. But so, okay, my mom grew up in a very, very healthy household. She is now 65 and she was born in the 50s. So that wasn't as typical, right? Like she had wheat bread sandwiches and no one else at her school did. Her dad was a chef and her sister ended up opening a bakery. Her sister dropped out of high school to open a bakery that ended up being extremely successful. So
Wow.
health food was like big in my mom's world. Do you know the brand Barber's Bakery? Like if you ever had Puffin
Yes.
cereal?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was my aunt who made
What?
that. Yeah.
We have their cereal all the time.
Oh my gosh. Yay. Well, she sold it and is no longer involved, but yeah, she dropped out of high school to like be a food person, and it was like unheard of at the time to sell. Her niche was that her products were healthy. Can you even believe?
Yeah.
Like that's hilarious. Now it's like good luck.
Yeah.
But no one was like, anyway, it's kind of a cool story. But cut to my mom grew up super healthy and she was like, no, no. So my mom to me was like, you eat what you want to eat. What you do affects you. If you want a ton of sugar, you can, but you're going to crash. So I would eat just like donuts and sugar and cereal and I McDonald's and I ate all this wild stuff. And all my friends were like, I don't get to eat that. Like, I want to come to your house. And then after several years of that, I just felt disgusting. And I was like, I feel horrible and I can't sleep and all these things. And then I just stopped. And it wasn't cool to me to eat all this stuff because I was allowed to. And that worked. But I could also see how that would be hugely problematic for someone else, for a different, it's like, what if I became addicted to eating donuts and McDonald's? Like, so it worked for me, but I could see how it could not work at all. Like, I'm like, Mom, why did you do that? And she's like, I don't know. I had cancer and I was busy and you were annoying. And I was like, okay. So kind of intuitive eating though, in a way.
Okay. You want what you can't have. So your friends that said, I'm policed, they probably have some issues around food now. I love that. And so I'm 1,000,000% not surprised that you have a healthy relationship with food and you weren't policed as a child.
There
Yes.
you go. About this,
Yeah.
I'm like, I have plenty of other issues and things that I was policed on. Also, last thing I'll mention, just because it's interesting, I did, and I wish I remember what it was. In elementary school, I saw a documentary about food, and I did cut out red meat, cows, and pigs from a very young age. When I was like 11, I don't know, it changes. Sometimes I say it was 10, sometimes I say it was 11, sometimes it was 12, something around there. So I have not had red meat for most of my life at this point. However, I always say when people are like, oh, how do you do that? Or not that people really care or are interested, but it's like, when you're a kid, it's a different story. Like, I've
Mm.
never cut anything out or restricted as an adult. Like, people making a diet change now, that is a big thing. Like, if I cut out chicken or if I cut out dairy or cut out anything, props to those people, because I know a lot of people do for health reasons or whatever. And I say props to you, because I've actually never experienced that as an adult. That's wildly challenging. Like, it's like learning a language. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't even remember what it tastes like, but I don't really know why I did that. Like, I saw something and was like, okay.
It sounds like it was like an ethical reason.
But like, I wish I had a more profound like stance on it. I'm like, yeah, I think it's good for the environment, but I'm not like obsessed with my stance. I just like, I don't
That's
know.
lovely. That's
It's
lovely.
so random.
Someone said to me on my Instagram, because we think of like veganism or vegetarianism as so black and white. And there was this girl who I think was in recovery, but was also vegan. She said, I eat cheese sometimes and the world doesn't stop spinning. Right? Like,
Love that.
diet
Mhm.
culture is black and white thinking. They want you to think in terms of good or bad.
Right.
But as you seem very balanced about it all, which I love.
Thanks. Well, appreciate it. I try. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I gained weight during the pandemic, like a lot of people did. And I was like, oh, like, yeah, that's noticeable. Like, that's weird. But like, moving on. I mean, I'll lose it at some point or I won't. And it is something I noticed, though. We're not going to stay the same forever, like you're saying, as we get older. But it's part of life, which is kind of beautiful. Even other things like getting a gray hair, growing chin hair, like your pubes getting weirder. Like, weird things do happen as we age, you know?
Well, oh my gosh, Carrie Fisher I love Carrie Fisher. She has had the best quote: "Men don't age better than women. They're just allowed to."
Oh, that's depressing, but I also love her for saying it.
Yeah. Right? Like, yeah, we're supposed to get wrinkles. Yeah, menopause, you actually gain weight in menopause.
Yes.
It's a thing. It's okay.
Okay, as someone who seemingly has a healthy relationship with food as of now, how can I be a better ally? How can I be a better friend to those who are struggling with their relationship with food?
You know, I'm not like huge on like, these are the do's and don'ts, but
Right. Tell me everything that I should do and not do.
let me police you.
Yes.
I think complimenting weight loss, even though you know it's what they want to hear and it'll make them feel so good in the moment, is very harmful in the long term. Unconditionally love your friends regardless of their weight. So, some tools if your friend is like, oh, like I'm on this diet again and I'm cutting out this and I'm cutting out that, you can support them without making it weight focused. Be like, are you stressed? Are you happy with this? Like, I'm here for you if you need to talk about if anything deeper is going on. But in general, because also complimenting someone's weight, like, you don't know if someone's sick, you don't know if you're complimenting an eating disorder. Stay away from weight. I would recommend the book The Body Is Not an Apology. Amazing. What we don't talk about when we talk about fat, just like, you know, we're allies to different races and sexualities, the fat community, and I'm saying fat as a reclaimed word, that's not a negative word. We need to be allies to them because we have all this privilege, you know, as thin white women. So I think educating ourselves is first the most powerful thing.
Beautiful. And I'm so glad you said that, because there are so many factors. I mean, this is why we're human beings. Like, we all come from completely different experiences, and everything that impacted us as a child, our nature versus nurture, affects who we are as we get older. And certainly there are people who benefit from thin privilege. Myself is a huge example. So even the fact that I have this good relationship with food, I've always enjoyed healthy food. I like eating healthy food. Guess what? There's a lot of people who also do that don't look how I look. That we both eat very healthy, but they present differently, and how people interact with them in the world affects the relationship with food, which is not how I experience the world. So that also is a huge factor, like you're saying.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Body diversity is real. Me and another person could go to the same job, sit the same amount, walk the same amount, eat exactly the same, work out exactly the same, and we would have two very different bodies. And
Yes.
I love that meme. It's like this thin person and she said it's like a tweet and she's like, I'm like addicted to heroin and eat Cheetos all day and nobody's policing my health. You know?
Right.
Because she
Wow.
presents as what society deems as healthy, which is not true. You cannot judge someone's health by how they look.
People assume that I work out all the time. And that's really interesting. And I'm like, actually, no, not really. Like
Right.
I could benefit from more exercise and I'm, figuring out that journey
Mhm.
because it's very important to exercise your body and not just be like, okay, well, I look this way, so I'm good. No, no, no. No, no, no. And I
Yeah.
have so much empathy for people who exercise all the time or whether it's weight training or whatever it looks like. And people are assuming that they're overweight. And it's like, no, these are some of the healthiest people. And yet different things are projected onto different people based on so many factors. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you're so ahead of the curve in terms of understanding that. I think the general population is still, I just
Just
wish
don't get
people,
it. Yeah.
yeah. And but like how could they get it? Like doctors are fat phobic and if your doctor's telling you, it's like there's also a book that I definitely recommend called Health at Every Size, which is exactly what we're talking about and it's still very relevant today, but the author Lindo Bacon is now kind of elevating this approach that we as a society need to change in order to support everyone. It's not actually individuals.
Another thing popped into my mind. I don't want to go too far down this, but just I have to share. I love what you say about fat being a reclaimed word. Fun fact, when I was 18 at USC, which
Mhm.
was I started going there in 2009. LOL, throwback. I was the body image coordinator of the entire Greek system because there was a week called Fat Talk Free Week. And I was elected to this position. I ran for something else. And then I got elected to the position of body image coordinator. And I had to hold focus groups with sorority women across campus. And we put on this week-long program as to why you cannot and should not say the word fat. And I was actually flown to Texas to Tri Delta's headquarters, which is in Dallas, which is the only time I've been to Dallas. So full circle moment for us.
Wow.
And I was trained on how and why to tell all these teenagers to not say fat, which now is a reclaimed word and is completely different
Yes.
school of thought. But fun fact of my past. So,
I am so interested in this from like so many different angles.
right? I don't even know if they probably don't. They probably don't do that exact thing anymore, but
Yeah. I mean, I will say, okay, so like, did you find like body image and like comparison within the Greek system to be really intense?
yeah, absolutely. I think it was tremendously beneficial to have had this program. It was also a very challenging program because no one wanted to do it. Like no one was excited about it. And I had to be like, now we're going to see this doc. And everyone was like, you're weird. Who are you? Like, all the things.
Do you think you had body diversity within the Greek system or
Absolutely not. Absolutely
oh,
not.
interesting.
I think the Greek system is really, really messed up. Hey, I was in it. I made some lifelong friends
Yeah.
and there's a huge amount of there's wonderful things that occur with volunteer programs and they donate a lot of money to childhood cancer and all these
Yes,
these
yes.
lovely things. And no, the entire point when I was there was how many blonde white women can they
Yes.
get into your sorority? And whether or not that's what's being said, the most popular sororities had the majority of white blonde women. I think it's still a huge problem. I think across the country, I think it's still extremely problematic. I don't have the solutions, but hopefully someone does.
The ballet world and the Greek world should like get together and
And fucking figure some shit out.
amen.
Okay? Right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Greek. One wonders, like, I mean, there's no way it's as bad now than it was even then. Like, I'm sure There are Gen Z people freaking out and doing all of these things in the dance and Greek communities. The question is where. The question is what. The question is, are the solutions only taking place at privately funded campuses with resources? Like what's happening in the South? What's happening in public schools? It's a lot to take on. And originally, Greek life was created because people got married at young ages, and it was such a big deal to get into a sorority because that sorority was matched with this fraternity, and you would find your husband. So, like, that's why it was such a big deal a million years ago. But now that that's not what it's for, can we just, like, not do that? Can we
Oh my gosh,
not?
I didn't know that. Like, in my heart, I knew that fact, but that's wild.
Skylar, at the training, they told us about certain colleges. They reference colleges in Oklahoma and in the South. After recruitment week, the suicide rates would be so high because it was literally like life or death to these women who thought, if I'm not in this sorority, I won't meet a husband. Like I won't, like my mother and my grandmother. And the fact that was even talked about in a training that was not specific to a suicide trigger warning training, or was not specifically led by people who specialize in how to talk to young people about suicide, is also problematic. Like, why was this even being taught to me? But it blew my mind. I was like, are you fucking kidding? And they're talking about the 80s, but that wasn't that long ago.
No. Oh my gosh. I need a documentary.
Yes. Yeah.
I need a documentary.
We really need a documentary. Okay. My thing that I struggle with, this interview does not need to go down this rabbit hole, but maybe it will. I struggle with social media. I don't have a blissful relationship with it. It's not horrible. I do it. I interact. I have a therapist around it. I also help other people with social media sometimes. I do less of that now for mental health. I know that you also work as a social media consultant, and you have thriving accounts that are doing great and followers and all these things. Would love to hear your take on how social media can be an effective tool in recovery and how it can be detrimental.
So I was just reading this book, How to Break Up with Your Phone.
Love the title.
Yes. And I read Digital Detox a few years ago. It was a little too black and white for me. I'm like, I can't run a business like this. Like,
right.
I have to check my email, like, you know.
Yes.
But I really like this book, and it's really cute and thin, which is a good type of thin.
The only thin that is okay to love. Just kidding.
Thank you. Just kidding. I'm going to obsess over that comment for 5 days straight.
Okay.
After we hang up.
I really just fucked everything up. Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
And what I love about it is on like day 3 or something, you write down like what you love about social media and then what you don't. So 2 things can be true at once.
Yes. Like how death is both really sad and sometimes funny and beautiful, but also very sad. So I feel you.
Amen. And speaking of death, because we are who we are, you know, something that it's really hard for me. I have learned so much about recovery. I love the therapy accounts. I've actually made really good friends. Like one of my best friends is someone who we started a relationship in DMs. Like it's really wonderful. Your podcast, like I'm sure so many people found it through social media. As an actress, I'm sure that's a whole other thing about needing an online presence. But first of all, they make it addicting. That is purposeful. Like, you know, those like red notifications, those used to be blue on Facebook, but they weren't addictive enough. So they changed it to red. They're literally using the slot machine.
Yeah, it's like gambling. The notification when you pull it down, that it said in the Social Dilemma, or what was the documentary? Was it the Social?
That's it. That's
okay,
it.
The Social Dilemma. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, that blew my mind when I realized it was like a slot machine on Instagram.
It is.
That's fucked up.
It's so, and then it's the comparison trap. Also, like, it's not real. Like, the things people are posting aren't real. And as someone who does struggle with addiction, I mean, I'm in a very, very healthy place. I told my therapist, I was like, sometimes I look down at my phone and I look back up and 40 minutes of my life are gone. And I'm like, not okay with it. So I'm at a place like, and also someone who tries to avoid feelings. It's the easiest thing to do. I am at a place where I have to have better boundaries. My phone sleeps in the living room. ask me about this in 3 months because I am really hoping that I live my life more outside of my phone than in it. But
Love.
what's like the hardest thing for you?
I think the hardest thing, and I don't feel super charged by this right now, but in the past I will say, so like last year I worked at BuzzFeed for a year. I was in their talent program. So there was 10 of us essentially kind of pitted against each other to see who could like be the next viral BuzzFeed person, not healthy. To know that there are people cultivating followings, whether it's for the right reasons, the wrong reasons, strategy, or luck, there are people doing it and they can use that for good if they want, I think is really, really fucking cool. Like, would I love to have a larger community, impact more people, talk to more young people about grief? Absolutely. And I feel that some of the things that I might consider doing to get there are not in alignment with my own integrity.
Amen. Amen.
Okay.
And you know what
Okay.
that reminds me of? We're always chasing shinier, prettier things in life.
Uh-huh.
Why all of a sudden you have to have 200,000 followers to do meaningful work? Like sometimes meaningful work is not about how many people you can reach. And I have like the work you do with your mentee, how old is she?
She's 10. She was 9 when we started and is now 10.
That is like powerful work. And my mind's all
Thank
messed
you.
up about it too because like, oh, but I want 1 million followers and then I'd finally get the book deal that I've been like killing myself to try and get. You know what I mean? But like I have to remind myself that just because social media exists and like bigger numbers are better, maybe bigger numbers aren't better.
Well, I love that. And it's also like, well, you're in competition with yourself. Like it doesn't really matter. Like, okay, someone has this many more followers than you. Okay. Like if you actually do want to have a larger community, like what are you doing this year that can reach more people than you did last year? Because you know, you're not going to reach what they got necessarily this year or ever or whatever. So it's like just staying in your own world to grow that. And I don't knock people who are committed to growing followings. Like it's important. It's business. It's great. Like I do it to a point. I will say it's like I do, but I don't. Like if I really wanted to be super intentional and actually grow and make this thing, like there's a lot of other things I would, could, or should do. So I'm not fully trying to do it, but I've had phases where I have.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like sometimes I can tell like who is trying to do it. And sometimes I'm like,
is this authentic?
yeah. But like also go them. Like, is that feeling just coming out of my own jealousy? Like, do I just wish I was doing that? But then not really. I don't know. And some people that just like trying to grow a following and I'm like, but the community isn't about like healing or helping recovery or grief. I'm like, why do I have feelings about that? Because they're entitled to do whatever they want. Like,
right.
How does this present for you?
Oh, I have felt every shade of jealousy. I'll tell you that. I'll be honest about it. And I feel very intensely and I'm very hard on myself. And I think it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, which is like balance. Like, I have to be like, where am I happiest? And it's in the middle. Like, I try and post, I'll see what organic growth comes. I've been at the same number following for like 2 years now. You know, like I get new followers, they drop off, but that's where it was healthiest for me. And that's where I can enjoy.
Yes.
Ooh, my therapist said, she's an artist. She's so cool. She says this great thing. It might be Brene Brown. I can't remember exactly who it's from, but she says, if success finds me, let it be by luck. Which to me, that like grind and like I'm going to sell my soul to like be successful. Like it's actually about the art and the service. Like that's what it's really about. And as long as you keep doing that, like whatever finds you will find you.
Beautiful. I'm really interested in the relationship between ambition and faith. And I don't mean faith necessarily in a religious sense, but just like putting in the work and the grind versus letting things flow and enter. Like I feel like the word balance, like you're saying, is so important, because do I think if you put in no effort towards your dreams or business, do I think luck will find you? No, I do not. Like there does need to be effort and ambition that is applied, but like you're saying, in a way that is balanced. So like a few days a week you grind, a few days you don't, or like this month you grind, next month you don't, but like grinding 365 days a year, like I just know some people like with that energy, and it's just like I'm exhausted even just like talking to them about it, you know?
Wait, I'm so curious about afterlife. It's because I was in the ballet world, so I know what auditions feel like.
Sure.
Like, I also think like the more you show up, the more you'll get, which I think is really beautiful, especially if you're like showing up in this authentic way. Mm-hmm. What does that feel like to have to audition, to have like, what is your life like?
Such a great question. Like the bullet points version. I mean, it's always changing and it's always exciting. It also can bring up some of these feelings like we're talking about. I will say the transition to virtual has been really different. So like the past year and a half, 2 years have been completely different than when my life looked like previously. I think there's something about doing it all. Like this is my self-tape wall. Like I do it all here. That is actually a little bit healthier because you're not seeing all the women every single time. You would see not all of them, but like even just seeing like 2 or 3 in the waiting room, and like you look the exact same, or you look totally different, or like they look funnier than you, or they're like way prettier than you. I mean, it's just all was in your face. So I think now it's like a lot of virtual appointments. It's all from your home. Sometimes it's more challenging. I think it's a little more work on the creator, the actor to, you know, like you find a reader and you light it yourself and you edit and do all these things. But I think it's been a little bit healthier. And yeah, you're putting yourself out there all the time. And one of the challenges can also be at certain phases of your career, if less things are coming in, then you're not even being considered. I mean, I've had years where I only have a few auditions a year, and now, you know, my career's it's farther along than it was, but it's taken a really long time to get there. And like we all want more. Like I'm not, like one of my goals is to be a lead on a television series. Like I'm absolutely not. And that's my goal. I might, you know, have 3 lines in a show.
It only takes one yes, though, you know.
Thank you, Skylar. And I won't go into the stories, but yeah, I've almost been, and I've had to sign the contracts and hire a lawyer, and you know how much money you would make, and that's wild. But anyways, the hardest part is probably when you see someone who does achieve like lead, you know, who does book a series, and you're like, but that person just started doing it. It doesn't happen often. Most of the people I know who book series are very hardworking and very talented. Sometimes not. And then we're all like, what?
The equilibrium has been thrown off.
But that does happen, you know, in the dance world, the acting world. People get breaks. People meet someone. And
Instagram.
I feel like it happens a little bit less, or I'm just like close my eyes to it. Like I think like they realize a little bit, like it doesn't cross over as much as they thought it would, unless you're like an Addison Rae. I mean, if you're one of the biggest names, like of course it does. Yeah. But I think they've noticed that a lot of people in the middle, like people are following you because of what you're talking about, because of your vlogs, because of your partner, because of your food, like not because you're an actor. Yes. So I don't think it always crosses over. And vice versa too. I know very talented actors that like don't know how to do social media, and social media people that don't know how to act. It's like all wild. What does it look like for you in your own social media consulting world, if you care to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm now only consulting. I still run a few accounts, but I'm trying to get further and further away from it. It's just not healthy for me.
Sure. Thank you for your honesty. That's what I would think. But you know, people do it. I feel like, I mean, I do know some people that do it that I feel like, I think if you have like zero interest in like doing it yourself, maybe, you know, which I think that person could exist. But like how you're also doing your own thing, I don't know.
I follow like some brands, and I'm like, oh, this social media girl was like born to run this account. And like, go
Wow.
do you.
Yeah.
But like, this, not me.
Oh my gosh, Skylar, I'm like talking your ear off. Skylar, this was such a great conversation. I feel like some of these are more interviews and some are more combos. I feel like we were comboing because I have so much to talk to you about. So this was
I
awesome.
love it.
I really
so
appreciate
much.
your time and sharing your story with your dad and how the way that you're intersecting your experience writing as an anti-diet culture writer, as well as experiencing grief and how those things interact and yet are also separate is really beautiful. Wishing you the best luck with your book. Where can people connect with you and find you online?
Yes. So if you want to come hang out with us and get some like grief and body image support on Instagram, No Crying and Cooking. And obviously my name is Skylar. So if it says Skylar, that's the right account. And then
Your pod.
Yes. If you are a Bob's Burgers fan, the TV show, my fiance and I have a podcast, Bob's Credits, where we kind of go through each episode and then the end credits. And it's super fun.
I'm obsessed with the specificity of this. Yes, to specificity. Skylar, this was awesome. Thank you for your time. You rock the house.
Yodo, you only die once.